Something is living above your ceiling. It knows your name. It knows where you sleep. Welcome to the Black Archive. Subscribe, turn off the lights, and let's open the files. I was 20 years old, winter break of 2019, house sitting for my Aunt Karen in Oak Park, Illinois. Her place was this old 2-story colonial house on Scoville Avenue, maybe 6 blocks from the Green Line. She was in Florida for 3 weeks. I had the whole house to myself, free food, decent Wi-Fi, her streaming password. I remember thinking, I had the best deal of anyone I knew. The house was built in the 1940s, hardwood floors that creaked no matter where you stepped. An unfinished attic I had never been in. My aunt used the pull-down stairs once a year to store Christmas decorations. That was it. By day 4, a massive ice storm rolled through Cook County. The news was calling it the worst in 15 years. Around 11 p.m. on a Tuesday, the power went out. Not just my aunt's house, the whole block. I checked my phone. The power company's outage map was just a giant red blob across the western suburbs. Estimated restoration, 18 to 24 hours. I lit a candle from the kitchen junk drawer, one of those scented ones that smelled like fake pine trees. The house was so quiet, I could hear the ice ticking against the windows. That's when I heard the first thud, directly above my bedroom ceiling. Heavy, deliberate, like someone dropping a boot on the floor. I told myself, raccoons. My aunt had mentioned raccoons getting into the gutters before. That's all it was. Maybe the cold drove them further in this time. I grabbed a broom from the hallway closet, stood on my bed, and banged the handle against the ceiling 3 times. Hard, just to scare them off. Something banged back 3 times. Same rhythm, same force. I stood there, holding the broom like an idiot. My heart was doing something it had never done before. I told myself it was echo, vibration through the wooden beams. Old house, right? That's what old houses do. I set the broom down and got back under the covers. I did not sleep. The next morning, I noticed the pantry. My aunt had stocked it before she left. Canned soup, granola bars, crackers, half of it was gone. I'd eaten some, sure, but not that much. Not the 2 cans of tuna I had never touched, not the sleeve of crackers I had not opened. I stood at the bottom of the attic stairs for 10 minutes before I pulled the cord. The stairs unfolded with a long, agonizing creak. I had my phone flashlight in one hand and a kitchen knife in the other. I climbed 3 steps, 4, 5. I raised the phone above the hatch line and swept the light across the attic. In the far corner, past the exposed insulation and the ductwork, I saw a nest. That's the only word for it. A pile of my aunt's winter coats spread out flat like a mattress. Empty tuna cans, food wrappers, a gallon jug of water, half empty. And then the light caught movement. A pair of filthy, socked feet, scrambling backward, dragging across the plywood, disappearing behind the water heater, into the darkest part of the attic, where the roof pitched down to nothing. I fell backward off the stairs. I hit the hallway floor so hard I bit my tongue. I could taste blood. I shoved the attic stairs back up, dragged my aunt's dresser underneath the hatch. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely dial 911. The dispatcher told me units were delayed. The roads were sheets of ice. 45 minutes minimum. I spent those 45 minutes sitting in the locked bathroom with the knife, listening to the ceiling. Something up there was moving, slowly, patiently, like it was waiting for me to fall asleep. 2 officers finally showed up. Around 2:30 in the morning, they searched the attic. The nest was still there, the food wrappers, the coats, but whoever had been living up there was gone. One of the officers found the attic vent screen on the back of the house. It had been pried off. Fresh boot prints in the ice led to the alley and vanished. They told me it was probably a squatter. Happens more than you would think, one of them said. But here's the part I cannot stop thinking about. Tucked under one of the coats, the police found a water-damaged notebook. Inside were hand-drawn floor plans, detailed, measured. Every room, every door, every window. They weren't plans of my aunt's house. They were plans of my dorm room, my actual dorm room, at a university 3 states away, down to the exact placement of my bed, my desk, and the window I always left cracked open at night. I transferred schools that spring. I never went back to my aunt's house, and I still don't know who was in that attic or how long they had been watching me before I ever showed up. File 2 was recovered from a confiscated estate sale journal in Astoria, Oregon. The farmhouse is still standing. My grandfather died in March of 2021. He left me his farmhouse outside Astoria, Oregon, about 5 miles off the highway down a dirt road that doesn't have a name on any map. I was 27, between jobs, and figured I'd spend the summer fixing the place up to sell. The real estate agent said the bones were good, but the cosmetics were challenging. That was generous. The place was rotting from the inside out. The farmhouse sat in a clearing, surrounded by Douglas fir trees so tall they blocked out the sky. By 4 in the afternoon, cell reception was non-existent. I had to drive 2 miles back toward the highway just to get a single bar. The Wi-Fi my grandfather supposedly had turned out to be a disconnected phone line. I was completely alone out there. The first week went fine. I pulled up carpet, ripped out baseboards, cleaned out decades of neglect. It rained every single day. Heavy Pacific Northwest rain that turned the dirt road into a mudslide. By day 8, the road washed out completely. My truck wasn't getting out until it dried. The scratching started on night 3, slow, rhythmic, coming from inside the air ducts. A long, scraping sound, then silence, then another scraping sound. I figured it was mice, maybe a branch pressed against an exterior vent. The house was old. Old houses talk, but every morning I noticed something I couldn't quite explain. A fine white dust gathered around the edges of the hallway attic hatch. Just a thin layer, like drywall powder. I wiped it up the first 2 mornings. By the 3rd morning, it was back, slightly thicker. I told myself the humidity was loosening old plaster. The house was shifting. Normal decay. I almost believed it. On day 10, I decided to check the attic. The hatch was jammed. It took a pry bar and 15 minutes to force it open. I pulled myself up into the crawl space, expecting to find water damage, rat droppings, maybe a hornet's nest. The attic was empty, completely bare plywood and exposed rafters, except for one thing, sitting dead center on the floor, an antique baby monitor, beige plastic, the kind from the early 90s. It was switched on. The green power light was glowing. I picked it up and heard breathing, slow, ragged, wet. I held my own breath to be sure. The breathing continued. It took me about 5 seconds to realize it was broadcasting from downstairs, from the hallway I had just been standing in. Someone had placed a transmitter unit somewhere below, and this receiver was capturing every sound I made. I climbed down fast. My hands were shaking. I searched the hallway, the vents, behind the baseboards. I couldn't find the other unit. Then I looked down, the white dust around the hatch. I knelt and really looked at it this time. Mixed into the powder were tiny, pale crescents, dozens of them, hundreds, freshly clipped human fingernails, some jagged, some smooth, swept into neat little piles. Right outside my bedroom door. I don't remember grabbing my keys. I remember my boots slipping on the wet porch. I remember the rain hitting my face. I got in my truck and tried the dirt road anyway. I made it about a quarter mile before the mud grabbed the tires, and I had to walk the rest of the way to the highway in the dark, in the rain, for 2 miles until I got a signal and called the county sheriff. A deputy met me at the highway. We drove back in his truck. He searched the house top to bottom. The baby monitor was still in the attic. The fingernail dust was still on the floor. He couldn't explain it. He said he'd file a report. I never went back inside that house. I sold it as is for almost nothing. A month later, I finally worked up the nerve to go through my grandfather's belongings. In a leather-bound diary, buried between entries about crop yields and weather, I found one passage, dated June 1993. The handwriting was shakier than the rest. It read, "The man in the ceiling is hungry again, and I am too weak to keep feeding him." There were no entries after that, for an entire year. I don't know who or what was in that house. I don't know what my grandfather was feeding, or why. I just know that when I held that baby monitor to my ear, the breathing I heard didn't sound like it belonged to anything that should still be alive. File 3 originates from a suppressed psychiatric evaluation recorded in Savannah, Georgia. The patient was never discharged. In August of 2022, I was 24, living in Savannah, Georgia. I had just started a waitressing job on River Street and needed somewhere cheap, fast. I found a listing for a top-floor apartment in a converted Victorian house in the historic district. Rent was $575 a month, utilities included. The building was old and beautiful in that crumbling southern way. Wraparound porch, original crown molding, paint peeling off in strips like sunburned skin. The landlord was a quiet man named Mr. Pruitt. He lived off-site, only came by to collect rent in cash on the 1st of every month. There were 2 other tenants below me, an elderly woman on the 1st floor I never saw, and a man on the 2nd floor I only ever heard through the walls. A television playing at full volume until exactly 10 p.m. every night. My apartment was the entire 3rd floor. Sloped ceilings, a walk-in closet, a clawfoot tub. Above me was just the attic. Mr. Pruitt said nobody had been up there in years. By mid-September, hurricane season hit hard. A massive Category 4 storm was bearing down on the coast. Mandatory evacuation orders went out, but by the time I got off my shift, every road out of the historic district was flooded. Storm surge had turned the ground floors into wading pools. I was stuck on the 3rd floor with candles, canned food, and no way out. The strange things had started weeks before the hurricane, though. Small things. My toothbrush was wet when I woke up one morning. Not damp, wet, like someone had just used it. I figured I was half asleep and had brushed my teeth twice. I do that sometimes when I'm stressed. Then the shower drain started clogging with hair. Long, grey hair. Mine is brown and barely past my shoulders. I blamed the old pipes. Maybe it was built up from a previous tenant. These old houses, you know, the smell was the worst. This sharp metallic stench that would hit me randomly, walking through the hallway, opening my closet, like old pennies, and something organic underneath it. I bought 3 air fresheners from the dollar store. They didn't help. Then I noticed the crawl space panel in the back of my walk-in closet. It was a small wooden square, maybe 2 feet by 2 feet, painted over so many times it blended into the wall. I had never even registered it was there, but now it was cracked open about an inch. I pushed it shut and told myself the humidity had warped it. Old houses, old wood, old problems. A week before the hurricane, I set up my laptop on my dresser and aimed the webcam at my bedroom door. I told myself I was trying to catch Mr. Pruitt entering my apartment while I was at work. Some kind of creepy landlord situation. That's what I told myself, because the alternative was too insane to consider. I checked the footage the next morning. For the first 2 hours, nothing, just me, sleeping. Then, at 3:47 in the morning, the closet door opened, slowly, A woman lowered herself from the crawl space. She moved like something unfolding, limbs too thin, joints bending in exaggerated slow motion. She was filthy, matted grey hair, a nightgown that might have been white once. She walked to my bedside and stood there, perfectly still, for almost 3 hours, just standing over me, watching me breathe. At 6:22 in the morning, she turned, climbed back into the closet, and pulled the panel shut. I watched the footage twice, because I needed to be sure I wasn't losing my mind. I wasn't. Then I checked my bedroom door, the deadbolt. I had been locking it every single night, but when I looked closely at the hardware, the screws were fresh. Someone had removed the entire lock, reversed it, and reinstalled it. The lock I had been turning every night wasn't locking me in. It was allowing someone to lock me in from the hallway side. The hurricane hit that night. The power died within the first hour. I barricaded myself in the bathroom with a steak knife and my phone at 4% battery. The wind was screaming outside, and somewhere above me, in the attic, I could hear movement, dragging, like something heavy, being repositioned. I sat in that bathtub for 9 hours. I did not sleep. Every time the house groaned, I held the knife tighter. At one point, I heard the closet panel slide open, footsteps in the bedroom, muffled by the carpet. Then they stopped. Outside the bathroom door, the doorknob turned slowly. I had wedged a towel rack under it. The knob turned back. Then, nothing. Silence. Except for the storm. When the floodwaters finally receded, 2 days later, I flagged down a National Guard truck and told them everything. They called the Savannah police. Officers searched the attic that afternoon. The woman was gone, but taped to the rafters were Polaroid photographs, dozens of them, all of me, sleeping. In most of the photos, my eyes were closed, normal, but in 7 of them, 7, my eyes were wide open, not squinting, not half-lidded, wide open, staring directly into the camera with a completely blank expression. I have no memory of being awake for any of them. The officers said they'd investigate. They suggested it was a squatter, more common than you'd think in these old buildings, one said. Almost bored. They never found her. Mr. Pruitt claimed he had no knowledge of anyone in the attic. The crawl space connected to a series of passages between the walls that ran the full height of the house. I moved out that week. I sleep with the lights on now, every night, and some mornings I wake up and my toothbrush is wet, and I live alone on the 4th floor of a modern apartment building in Charlotte, North Carolina, and there is no attic above me. I checked. That closes the archive for tonight. Subscribe and submit your own dark files. If you're not done yet, click the tape on your screen right now.